Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2021-22 season. My name is Dan and today we are doing a Game Week 30 episode of Buy, Sell, Keep, Avoid. The series where we kind of look at some transfer trends and trying to figure out which kind of ones we should be going for, which ones are maybe a little bit too hyped up. We don't really want to be going for players who are hyped up that shouldn't be hyped up and, you know, kind of making the right transfer moves. That's what it's all about, guys. If you do enjoy this video, please do leave a like, please do subscribe if you're new around here. But without further ado, let's have a look at the rules of the video. So buys are players you probably don't have but should consider bringing in. Sells are players you probably have but should consider removing. Keeps are players that you might be thinking about removing but I think you should keep them. And avoids are players that are pretty hyped up right now. I think these might actually be potential traps that you should actually avoid going for in your teams. Now, avoids are often controversial, guys, so do stay tuned for that one. And I should say, on last week, some of the shouts that I made turned out pretty bad. I said sell Ronaldo and buy Kane. Obviously, Ronaldo got a hat-trick, so that sell went really badly last game week. Last game week as well, I said avoid Tony, and you know, he did his penalty merchanty stuff once again. But look, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? All I could do is make predictions to the best of my ability, and I hope they go right. And if they don't, I'm so sorry. Without further ado, guys, let's have a look at some buys. So our first buy is Harvey Barnes. Okay, so let's assume you're already tripled up on Spurs, for example. You've got your Kane, your Son, your Kulusevski, your Doherty, whoever. Now, I've spoken about those guys enough already, and I'm guessing you guys will already have them. If so, great. Now let's move on to some players that you might actually not have. Now, Barnes is one of those players that not many people have right now. He's super differential and a player I can really see thriving during this blank game week. Brentford, they concede a lot of chances down their right flank, the side that Barnes will be, you know, matching up against. So it's a really good matchup there, and if we're expecting Leicester to win, I would imagine that this would be the kind of area where we will see goals and assists come from. It's also pretty difficult to pick from the Leicester attack right now. The forwards are rotating, and most people are probably just going to default to Maddison as their Leicester pick, since he is, you know, typically the best Leicester midfielder, isn't he? But Madders is a really streaky player. He's not currently in one of those streaks. In fact, his minutes have been pretty stop and start due to injury, which is just no good for a player like him. Barnes, on the other hand, has been a real key player for Leicester of late, playing 90 in the last 3 games, scoring once and grabbing an assist in those 3 games as well. In fact, if you look back at Barnes' last 10 games in the Premier League, he has 2 goals and 5 assists. That's not too bad considering he has had some injury issues during this time. Underlying stats over the last 5 look solid. He's the #1 player for Leicester in terms of both XG and expected assists as well during this period. He's kind of taken a nice 4 shots per game, 3 shots in the box per game. I like that a lot. So if we're kind of looking longer term, after game week 30, Barnes looks good there too, mostly because Leicester have an incredible 3 double game weeks to come between now and the end of the season. With 9 game weeks left, that means Barnes is going to have a double game week on average once every 3 weeks. That's pretty nice when you think about it that way, isn't it? The first of those doubles is going to be in game week 33, where Leicester play against Newcastle and Everton. A pretty nice double there, you'd probably say. Yeah, so overall, I guess Barnes' underlying stats, they look really good. His performances are good. He has a good matchup this week with many fixtures to come, more fixtures than any other team, right? That's what Leicester have right now. So overall, he's just looking like a really, really good buy. My next buy is LACAZETTE. I know a lot of people are tripled up on Spurs already, maybe not on Arsenal though. Ramsdale, Saka, White, maybe Tierney, they're the popular guys right now. But I want to give a special shout out in this video to LACAZETTE, a player who I think has kind of gone under the radar a little bit. We've kind of been desperately searching for a forward that could pick up regular points. Well, what if I were to tell you that LACAZETTE has 10 goal contributions in his last 10 Premier League games? Now, granted, it's 8 assists and just 2 goals, so points haven't been anything crazy, but he is ticking along really nicely, so he could be that forward that we've been looking for this whole time. He was right under our noses the entire time, and we just didn't even notice him, I guess. Considering the lack of other forward options, this looks so appealing, it really does. Now, I know we typically think of Saka as the best Arsenal attacker to buy. Most people will probably agree with that, and to be fair, it's probably true given his price. But in terms of both underlying stats and actual output, LACAZETTE is competing with Saka. Take the last 5 game weeks, for example, where Arsenal have played 4 games. Both Laka and Saka have 17 shots and 13 in the box. Laka has had 1 more big chance and a slightly higher XG as well there. You know, penalties help with this kind of thing. And it's really only creativity where Saka looks like the better FPL option. And despite this, Laka has 4 assists and Saka has just 1 in this period. So honestly, if you have the budget for it and want to double up on Arsenal's improved attack, I think Lacazette seems like a really obvious player to bring in. Arsenal are also, you know, doubling in game week 33 most likely against Southampton and Chelsea. All the more reason to triple up on the Gunners. Arsenal are pushing for their first top 4 finish in what feels like forever. They aren't in any other competitions. They could, you know, even have their eyes set on 3rd place potentially, maybe overtaking Chelsea. This is going to be a big couple of months for Arsenal, and they're going to be in some, well, they're already in some of the best form in the league right now, and they're going to really want to continue that with strong teams every single game week. So it's a really good time to buy a player like Lacazette. Our first sell is Diogo Jota. Unfortunately, it does seem like Luis Diaz has booted poor Jota out of the Liverpool main 11, at least partially. Now, I'm not saying Jota is not going to get any minutes from here on. He definitely will get minutes, but he's not going to get enough really to justify his price tag, I don't think. Salah and Mane, you would expect them to be super nailed on as Liverpool are still chasing the Premier League title. And I can see players like Jota, Diaz, Firmino, maybe rotating quite a lot. And with Liverpool blanking, you know, really desperate to get some game week 30 players in. Like, midfielders are the best options right now to go for as well. You've got to find a midfielder to boot out your team, and it's difficult to justify keeping Jota, really. The problem is that there are just so many midfielders we want to bring in right now. You know, think Son, Saka, Coutinho, Kulusevski, Barnes, Maddison, you know, Rafinha. I could go on, and a midfielder does need to be sacrificed to facilitate these kind of moves, and it's really difficult to decide who to remove right now. Salah, you know, even though he blanks this game week, you're probably going to want to keep him. Players like Bowen or Chelsea mids, you're probably going to want to keep those players ready for game week 31. So out of the really popular midfielders that don't play in 30, it kind of really just leaves Jota as the only player you can confidently remove. Maybe some of you guys have players like James Ward-Prowse, maybe you can remove him. Gallagher, if you still have him as well. But those players are kind of less popular. So, you know, certainly out of the popular midfielders, the one I'd be most happy to sell is Diogo Jota. Next sell is Emmanuel Dennis. It's a kind of a shame it's taken Dennis having a blank to you know, convince us to consider selling him, but here we are. His underlying stats aren't actually that bad, you know, but he's just not performing right now. He's just not in the form he was earlier on in the season, and he doesn't look as confident or capable, if we're going to be completely honest. Cucho Hernandez is actually looking like the guy at Watford at the moment, the guy who's likely to get the goal contributions, you know, but in general, this Watford team is just not looking great for FPL. They can't keep clean sheets. They don't score too many goals. They rotate their forwards. It seems like a good time to hop off Watford players and kind of focus on some more consistent teams. Dennis and King in particular have been huge trolls for a long while now. The main problem with Dennis though is that he is 6.1 million, and you can't really justify keeping him at that kind of price, because 6.1 million is not like a really cheap price. It's not like a 5 million or 5.5 million player, is it? You know, it's a little bit too expensive to kind of justify keeping him, you know, for these 2 pointers every week. But more to the point, there are a couple of interesting forwards right now that we could consider going for, primarily Kane and Lacazette. Now, obviously, it's probably going to take you 2 transfers and a downgrade elsewhere to get Dennis to a Kane or a Lacazette. But with the Game Week 30 blank and more doubles on the horizon, it could actually be well worth doing a double transfer, getting Dennis out and replacing him there. I just think Dennis is just a very easy sacrifice right now. Blank in 30, and he plays Liverpool and City in the next 4 after that as well. For keeps, we've got Mikel Antonio. I know Antonio hasn't exactly been smashing it recently, but I just can't believe so many people are, you know, selling Antonio right now. It seems like such a luxury transfer, you know. But in Game Week 30, most people are struggling to field even 8 or 9 players. So even a 2-pointer from Antonio is going to be really valuable. I know that's a strange thing to say, but seriously, it could make a difference this week, and it could be like kind of unwise even to predict a 2-pointer from Antonio, because you've got to remember, West Ham have a good record against Spurs. This is West Ham's big derby game of the season, and they're always really up for it. West Ham are in competition with Spurs for European places as well, and with Jared Bowen out, we could see Antonio reinstated as the primary goal threat for West Ham, just like we saw earlier on in the season and in seasons gone by. Now, Bowen can't be the focal point anymore, so West Ham are going to have to look at their other finishers. Who is the next best goal scorer at the club after Bowen? you would say, I mean, particularly if we're talking historically, Antonio is the answer, right? I kind of understand if selling him is the only way to get Kane, for example, but I would at least try to figure out another way to do it. Though selling Antonio, surely there are more pressing issues in your team right now. Players with blanks who you actually don't want to keep long term either, particularly in midfield. That would be where I would prioritise my transfers this week, and I would keep Antonio because you never know, he could nick something against Spurs. My next keep is Reece James. I did want to include one highly sold player that doesn't have a fixture this game week as a keep, as a player who I would kind of recommend just keeping on your bench this week. And if there's one player I would keep despite the blank, it is Reece James. Now, the primary reason for that is that I honestly believe that James is going to be target number 1 in Game Week 31. I know he's injured, but remember, Game Week 31 is over 2 weeks away. That's going to be plenty of time to recover, so there's not going to be an issue there. And at that point, Chelsea play Brentford, Southampton, potentially Leeds, West Ham, Everton, Wolves, United, and then Watford on the final day of the season as well. So Chelsea, you know, we're going to have doubles there as well at some point or another. But basically, we've got double game weeks and a really nice run of fixtures right through to the end of the season for Chelsea. Really, really nice. And the Leicester game is going to be rescheduled at some point as well. So, you know, that's going to be two double game weeks at some point for Chelsea. It's going to be really nice. I think those doubles are probably going to occur, you know, one is potentially going to happen in 33, but probably won't. After that, it's going to be double game weeks between 34 and 37 for Chelsea, depending on their progress in Europe and the FA Cup. So fixtures do look really phenomenal going forward, and we're going to really want this player in our teams because what a player he is. I actually kind of forgot how impactful James can be at Chelsea until I saw his Burnley performance. Attacking, direct, creative, willing to take shots. He's everything you want in an FPL defender, and his stats in just one game since his return from injury kind of do prove that. The other reason why I would keep James over the other blank players is because he's a defender, and I look at the defensive options for this game week and I'm not that impressed. Outside of Wolves, I'm not really convinced that any teams have a good chance of a clean sheet in Game Week 30, so you'd probably be most likely swapping James out for a 2-point player, and then you'd want to bring him back in the following game week anyway. And that seems like kind of a waste of 2 transfers to me, transfers that are going to be really valuable during the business end of the season. So all in all, of all of the blanking players this week, if you have Reece James, still, you know, you haven't sold him after his injury, I think at this point you absolutely must keep him. And those that are able to keep him, actually, guys, I'm actually really jealous of you because I wish I had a Reece James waiting on my bench ready for Game Week 31. And finally, some avoids. Let's start you off with Matty Cash. You know, guys, I should probably say, anyone who doesn't play in Game Week 30 is obviously an avoid. I'm not going to patronise you by putting players like, you know, Kai Havertz in the avoid section. Obviously, you shouldn't buy that player. He doesn't even have a fixture. So I'm going to focus on players with Game Week 30 fixtures that I still don't think you should buy. And if I'm just picking from the popular ones, which is what I do in these videos, this is kind of difficult and this could go wrong. But here we go anyway. I would not be buying Matty Cash this game week. Firstly, I'm not really expecting Villa to get a clean sheet against Arsenal. That is, you know, the biggest appeal of a defender, the clean sheet, isn't it? And yes, maybe Cash is one of the Villa players more likely to get a goal contribution, you know, on a regular game week, but this is a really difficult fixture as well. Arsenal are not only one of the better teams in terms of attack, but also in defence on current form. I wouldn't expect Villa to score more than 1 goal, 2 at an absolute push, really. So if we're thinking about Cash's points potential, I don't really think this is just, you know, a week where, you know, he has a real high potential for points, really. I think this is going to be one of the weaker weeks to own Cash, to be honest. That said, I do think he's an okay pick for Game Week 30 in isolation. But what I really don't like is what puts me off a little bit more about buying a player like Cash is that his prospects thereafter, I don't really like them. Wolves away, Spurs, Liverpool in 33, which is likely to turn into a blank game week if Liverpool win versus Nottingham Forest in the FA Cup. So, you know, we can have blanks there and bad fixtures. We've got Leicester after that as well in 34. I think Villa will end up having some nice double game weeks, but it looks like this is going to happen a little bit later in the season. So even though, based on recent points hauls, Cash looks like a good pick, I'm not actually convinced that this is the right time to buy him. Maybe wait until after the bad fixtures, after the blanks are in the past and the doubles come into play, which is going to be from game week 34, 35 onwards. Admittedly, there's not really many other better options in defence right now. Maybe you can find something, or maybe you just take that as a sign. You know, if you can't figure out a good defender to buy for this week, maybe that's a sign you shouldn't be focusing your transfers on defenders. And again, as I keep saying, focus the transfers on midfield instead. Though one midfielder I wouldn't go for, however, is Ruben Neves. I know he's cheap, but he's cheap for a reason. He's a defensive-minded midfielder who typically does not get a lot of goal contributions. He likes to take the occasional shot from range, but usually it does not find the back of the net. You can see from his stats in the last 7 games, in 5 game weeks, he has only taken 1 shot in the box. The other 11 all outside the box. He has been quite fortunate to score twice, and it's difficult to predict when he's going to score again. Creatively, he's looking really bad. I know he managed to grab an assist, but you could say that was a little fortunate. He is averaging worse than 1 key pass every other game at the moment, and he hasn't, he's expected to be involved in just 16% of Wolves goals. And considering how few goals Wolves score anyway, 16% of the lack of Wolves goals anyway, that's really, really low, isn't it? So, sorry to go, kind of stats heavy on this one, because that is what I'm doing. But I just feel like a lot of people will just kind of look at the returns of Neves recently and not really look at the numbers behind them. The numbers behind them don't look so good. The performances don't look exactly indicative of a great FPL asset either. The occasional long shot once or twice per game does not typically breed results. And even though it's a game against Leeds this week, long shots are not the type of goal that Leeds typically concede anyway. I'd much rather go for a Martinelli at a similar price, who is much more direct, much more attacking player, putting up better numbers consistently, even in reduced minutes. And to add to the reasons to avoid Neves, obviously, there is a good chance that Wolves blank in game week 33 as well. So he's the type of player who will very quickly become dead weight in your team, I believe. So I doubt the 2-pointer that he is inevitably going to get this game week will make the transfer of bringing him in this week worthwhile. So avoid Neves. There we go. So, to summary, guys, we can basically simplify our transfer policy this week to buy and keep players with a Game Week 30 fixture, sell and avoid players without a Game Week 30 fixture. Be aware of upcoming potential blanks as well, guys, for Villa, Leeds and Wolves, if you are thinking about those players. Arsenal and Leicester would be the main teams I'd target, since they are not only play this game week, but have some double game weeks coming up very, very soon. If you can get to a minimum of 8 players, maybe 9 players with a hit, I think you'll do just fine this game week. 8 players should be enough to survive this game week, I think. Any less than that, if you've got kind of 5 or 6 players, maybe you are going to need a free hit. And if you don't have a free hit, maybe you've got to take some hits. But again, focus on Arsenal and Leicester players. Those are the teams you want to be targeting for the slightly longer term, because that's going to make the hits that you take now worthwhile in the longer term, as well as covering you for this game week. So that is what I would do there. And there we have it, buy, sell, keep, avoid concluded for Game Week 30. Guys, if you did enjoy this video, please do leave a like, massively helps out the channel, and do subscribe if you're new around here as well. A few more videos to come this week. We've got the 100 experts video, we've got my team selection video, and we're going to do a couple of streams on Friday, one in the morning, and then maybe early afternoon, and then we'll do one deadline stream on Friday as well. So plenty of good stuff to come for you guys. Do stay tuned for all that. But aside from that, guys, thank you once again for watching this video, and I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.